Well, I'm happy to see this again, the main chassis. It's always nice to spend time close to the main thing. Kind of makes you feel like stuff is really being done. I don't like working on small little assemblies separate all that much. I don't know, it's just a weird thing. The assembly up front is very similar to what they did at the rear for the suspension. It's almost symmetrical. All right, now my steering is going to go in. I'm going to set a couple of these little ball bearings in the bases down here. These shafts go on top, like so. Those are basically your steering posts. And all this goes on top of that. Now these pieces, these front braces, are the ones that would have had the cantilevers on them. They would attach right there. Like I said before, I left those out, but right now they say to put the bearing down on top here. I'm actually going to insert it inside of here. It just makes it a little bit easier to line it up. Make sure it's going down properly, sets in there nicely. And now my center pulley assembly gets attached over here on this side, like so. Two different sizes of screws are used there. A 10mm long one in the rear, 8 in the front. Now I'm going to do this front diff cover, and this is an alternate way of assembling this, because this is the way that you do it for the non-inboard front suspension setup for the traditional stand-up shocks, which includes adding on basically a shock tower mount to this piece. Right now I'm just getting the camber link mounts situated, and this is the shock tower add-on piece. Screws in from underneath. And now the front belt and the front diff. This will go together something like this. Sit right down in there, and you just have to line up the little cogs on the adjustable mount to make sure it goes in the default location for starters. All right, and then the top just goes over it. All right, there we go. Got a chassis here with a drivetrain, and you can turn the spur, and the front diff moves and the rear diff moves. Cool. Okay, sorry about that. A couple things came up. I had to step away briefly. During the cut, I had to move my camera a little bit, but I noticed that the belt here, the tension on it was just not making me comfortable. I was not happy with that. So I went ahead and tightened it up, moved the little cam over by just one. Moved it just one little setting over. Still got some looseness to it, but at least there's some tension, because originally with the factory recommended setting, it was just way too loose, especially for a belt that's not broken in. Okay, much better. So next up we get to start assembling and attaching A-arms, and it's going to start with the rear. You don't need to worry about confusing the front and rear A-arms on this vehicle, because they are the same, symmetrical front to rear. Alright, so I'm trying to get all my preparation done here for this step. I notice that the flashing is pretty bad on the M parts tree, and where that affects me the most is with these little ball pieces that fit onto the ends of the hinge pins or suspension pins, the main inner ones. Okay, that's a little bit better. Probably still not perfect, but bit better. Also, off camera, I tapped these holes for the droop screws. They want you to at least drill them, but I went ahead and tapped them. They were already drilled well enough to accept a 3mm tap, but now they'll accept these threads without any expansion. For now, I'm just kind of estimating the distance that they're sticking out on the bottom. It doesn't need to be exact. I'll set everything up once I have the car completely assembled. Okay, now hinge pins. We can get these properly set up. Need some of these pieces. Just kind of doing it assembly line style here. Some of these, and I'm going to need some shims. Got these little 0.3mm shims. You need one at each side of each pin. Slide that in through, and then we again get a different plastic spacer on this side, followed by one of the 0.3 shims. Oh, followed by the little ball end. I almost went with the wrong plastic spacer there. There's a total of 3 different sizes of 3mm black plastic spacers that get used in this portion of the assembly process. I'm going to get these arms on to the chassis and get the rear toe block put in place so that all this balancing act just fell off. All right, trying this one again. Snap in there. There it goes. That one just snapped in. And here comes that rear block. Just confirm I got it the right way. Looks good. A little bit of a tight squeeze with this one, but in it goes. And this gets secured with 2 countersunk screws from the bottom. Now here comes some shock mounts. All right, with those on there, now I can move on to the rear CVDs and hubs. So we're gonna build out here and here. All right, so I had to do a little bit of prep work on the hubs. They want you to drill these holes out because they're not molded all the way through. The hole doesn't go all the way through, so you drill that out. Then the way that this top piece works is pretty interesting because there's an extension. They actually did not go, for some reason, with the vertical mount anymore, the vertical Camberlink ball stud mount. They switched it to horizontal. So that's an interesting thing. I'm going to show you how that ends up working out. I'm going to do these at the same time, side by side, the 2 sides. So you get this little piece that fits on top as sort of an adapter, a right angle adapter, and that slides over on one side, slides over a set screw, which I didn't put in quite far enough here. It just provides some axial location to it. And then a screw comes in from the top, a 12mm screw. I'm tired of going back and forth between Phillips stuff and hex stuff here. So that goes like so. And then you get a 10mm screw, which comes through here, and to that I'm going to use a little bit of thread lock. Onto that attaches the new horizontal stud, like so. So it's kind of an odd setup that they came up with. See how that got attached, but that's it. So now I'm just going to duplicate that on the other side. Now CVDs. So these get to be assembled almost from scratch. Again, I'm opting for molybdenum grease here, the expensive stuff. These snap rings are used to keep the pin in. And they're very secure because they put 4 holes around the circumference. Well, 2 holes straight through, 90 degrees away from each other, through the circumference of the stub axle. And the snap ring actually goes through one of the unused holes because you put the pin through one pair, and then the snap ring has a little indent where it turns in, and that's basically locking itself in place. So that's a pretty good system, very, very secure. bearing, bow bearing. There you go. That's in. And the other side, that's in. And just need to put together these rear camber links. That's good enough. Okay, time for assembly. And now for the fronts. Alright, I expect this step will need to be pretty delicate because I've got a lot of spacers on here, a lot of little shims. Again, I am going with the non-IFS layout. No inboard front suspension, no lay-down shocks, because lay-down shocks require more weight because of the cantilever and stuff, and they give more play in the suspension because there are more linkages involved, and they also raise your center of gravity, and I want none of that because all that stuff is bad. So regular upright suspension it is in the front, which is why the shock mounts are on the front. CVD time again. And snap ring. All right, that's that. Okay, I think I have everything that I need here. Hopefully. Let's see how it goes. Again, more back and forth between hex and Phillips heads. Okay, that looks right. I think this is all good. Got a little tiny bit of binding in there. Everybody else is good, so I'll need to work this side through. Probably left just a little bit too much flashing in one of those little ball end pieces on this side. It does fall on its own, but it's just a little bit tighter. But I do think I will be okay. Now, with the arms on, it is time to next build the shocks.